All right, our next presenter is Ashley McLeroy. She is a rehabilitation engineer in the Birmingham area and has over 10 years experience in providing assistive technology services to children and adults with disabilities. Over the past few months, she's been working with a team to do some research on issues around productivity when people are going to school or working remotely. And so, without further ado, here is Ashley.
Well, hello there. I hope you've had a great day so far. This is your next session, and we're going to be talking about how to rock remote work. We're going to be talking about setting up your remote learning and work environment and working effectively. I'm Ashley McLeroy. I'm the rehabilitation engineer at ADRS in Homewood, and I have worked from home. I've worked remotely. I've schooled from home. I've helped others build work at home environments. I've studied remote work, and I've spoken to the experts. And despite all of that knowledge and experience, I still struggled when it came to working from home for this length of time during the COVID pandemic. And that's why this topic is so important to me and why I want to share information with you guys that can hopefully help you work from home more effectively and more comfortably. There are definitely good and bad aspects of working remotely, and I can guarantee that everyone's experience working remotely will be slightly different, if not a lot different. So let's talk about some of those good and bad, the benefits and the struggles. One of the benefits is that flexible work schedule. A lot of people enjoy having the flexibility to work the hours that work best for them, whether they're trying to work around care or another job, or maybe some other obligations that they have to take care of. The flip side to that is quite a struggle of not having boundaries. So, one of the things that I realized in starting to work from home is that everyone's working flexible work hours. They kind of assume that you're available at all hours of the day. That shouldn't be true, and you need those boundaries. Another benefit is being able to work wherever you want. If you want to go sit out on your porch and work while you drink your coffee, that's a great plan. If you want to drive down to the lake and do some work while you're enjoying the beautiful fresh air, that's a good plan too. But on the flip side, working remotely means you might not have a proper workstation, and that can cause a lot of frustrations, especially if there's clutter or you don't have the space that you need, or maybe you don't have the technology or furniture that you need. Another benefit of working from home is if you're an introvert, this is kind of paradise for you. If you're someone who really builds up energy by being by yourself and you're able to reflect and kind of recoup from your day, then you're probably enjoying being able to work remotely a little bit more. However, if you are an extrovert, this feels a little bit like an isolation chamber. Extroverts get their energy from other people, from socializing. So an extrovert, while working remotely, may feel a bit more drained during the day, especially at the end of the week when they haven't been able to socialize with anyone. Another benefit of working remotely is you have a little bit of extra time in your day without having a commute. You also don't have that stress of traffic, so that's one less stress factor off your plate. One of the struggles is that you may not be managing your time well. And if you're not doing that, you may notice that you're having to work extra hours to get work done. Maybe you're supposed to end at 5 p.m., but you're not ending till 7, 8 o'clock at night. And that's because you didn't manage your time well during the day. Maybe you slacked off a little bit too much in the morning, or you overslept and took advantage of that flexible work schedule, and now you're having to push your work hours into home life. Another benefit is that there isn't as much distraction from your coworkers or your classmates. You don't have that coworker that's dropping in your office to chat, or you don't have someone coming in to ask you for help with something constantly. You don't have the classmate who is constantly asking questions of the professor and it's prolonging class. However, on the flip side, working remotely means you may have some home life distractions. That could be a barking dog, that could be children, that could be a spouse that took up some annoying hobby that they didn't have before. So definitely there are good and bad aspects, as we can see, and these are just a few. There are many more benefits and there are many more struggles to working from home. You may feel like you identify most with one column, or you may feel like you have a mixture of benefits and struggles when it comes to working from home. I did a survey this summer to talk to people who had been working from home, and there were people who reported a lot of difficulties working from home, but they were so happy to be out of their toxic work environment, they didn't really want to complain about working from home. So sometimes the good outweighs the bad, or vice versa. Well, hopefully we're all ready to learn a little bit more about how to conquer remote work and learning. And I want you all to just note that any of the suggestions that are work-related could also correlate to learning from home as well, because as a student you should be working towards trying to develop some work behaviors as well. So let's move along. To jumpstart us on working remotely, I wanted to show you this video from the Harvard Business Review that goes over how to actually work when you are working from home.
Today, more and more people are getting the opportunity to work from home, which is great. But sometimes, like what's happening right now with the coronavirus, certain circumstances may actually force people to work from home. And while working from home does come with a lot of perks, you get to work in your pajamas, you have no commute, you get to hang out with your dog. I love you. It also does have some real challenges. Because there's less structure, you may actually work too much and focus too hard and get burned out.
What's the answer?
The second is actually kind of the opposite. It might just be hard to focus and get as much done as you really want to do. The key to overcoming both of these challenges is to set boundaries around your time and space. So when you're working, and when you're not working, you're not. Here's how. The first thing you're going to want to do is give yourself a dedicated workspace away from distraction, meaning away from the TV, away from any music or the kitchen. One thing that's really helpful is to be able to shut the door so that you're out of sight. The second thing you want to do is make a schedule and stick to it. And it may sound silly, but you actually want to pretend that you're not working from home. So get up as you normally would, pour yourself a cup of coffee, sit down with your computer. It's good practice to play out for yourself what's acceptable and not acceptable to do during office hours. So for example, when you're at work, you're not going to play with your dog or listen to music. So don't do them while you're at home actually focusing on your work. Finally, you're going to want to quit at quitting time. Even if you're in the middle of a project, put it down because it'll help you get jump started the next day. Do you want to get me sipping my coffee? Okay. The third thing you're going to want to do is set boundaries. The people or animals in your life are going to see you at home and think you're taking the day off, but that's not the case. Buddy, I need you to listen to me. I know what this looks like, but it's not what it seems. You're going to want to explain to them unapologetically that you're working from home. We'll go on a walk at lunch, we'll go to the park, and the more they see you around the house doing your thing, the more they're going to begin to understand that this is your time to focus. So at the end of the day, you might feel like you just didn't get enough done. This is pretty normal, and a lot of people feel this way when they work from home. That's why the last thing that's really important to do is celebrate your wins. Maybe you write them down and go over everything you did that day. These daily reminders are really good because they can create a virtuous cycle. And the next time you work from home, you might feel a little bit more focused and just like better about your day.
Following her advice, I want to break this down into 3 principles and expand upon those to help you work better when you're working from home. And we're going to talk about designating a workspace, working effectively, and maintaining your mental health. All right, number 1, designate a workspace. This is very, very important. And I liked this quote from an article on LinkedIn that states, whether you live with family or kids or roommates, you need to define your workspace if you want to get things done without disturbing others or being disturbed yourself. That is so true. All right, your work environment. Best case scenario, you have a dedicated work surface, you have a quiet room with no distractions, you have proper ergonomics so that all your technology, your chair, your desk, all of that set up properly, and you have high-speed internet so you can reduce the stresses that are caused from losing your internet connection. It's okay if you have a little bit less than that, especially if this is a temporary situation for you. Maybe you don't have a dedicated workstation, but you have a space that can transition easily into your workspace. You also would want something that maybe isn't completely quiet all the time, but you have the ability to reduce distractions. Maybe you're having to work from the kitchen table, but you can ask your kids to go play in their room, or maybe you could put the dog in a separate space as well. You also want the workspace to be comfortable. So you may not have a desk and a chair. Some people like working off their couch. That's not the best for your overall physical health, but if it's temporary and you're comfortable, it's okay to kind of use that for a little while. Things that you really want to avoid is using a cluttered workspace where life happens. If your kitchen table is the dumping grounds for everyone in the house, and that's going to clutter up your workspace, you really don't want to work there. You also want to avoid an area that promotes distractions. If your living room is the only place the family has to gather, watch TV, play video games, all those things that are super distraction. You have visual distractions, you have auditory distractions. You want to get as far away from that as possible. Really, you're not going to be able to work effectively in that environment. You also don't want to have a setup with potential to cause any injury or harm to your body. So if you are sitting on a kitchen bench and you have no back support and your kitchen table is really high, and you're going to end up experiencing some strain and stress and probably long-term effects in your musculoskeletal system. Also, you really want to avoid unreliable internet service. If you're having trouble with that, it's going to be a constant headache trying to resolve that issue and deal with all that you have to get done during the day. So, let's talk about protecting your physical health. And this is where we will talk about your actual physical workstation setup. Ideally, you want to get as close to this graphic as possible. It talks about having a good back support that supports your lumbar, having your hips and your thighs and your legs all properly positioned. You would like your feet flat on the ground or resting on a footrest. You don't want your legs dangling. That can affect your circulation. You would like your arms to be relaxed And this makes it a lot easier for you to type if your arms are in this really relaxed position. It allows your arms to kind of bounce on the keyboard. It would be nice if you had an adjustable height chair so that you can get to the position that you need to be at. And your monitor should be at eye level or slightly below. So this is just, a very generic graphic of what an ergonomic workstation is going to look like. And this is not going to be perfect for everyone, but you should try to get as close as possible to what you feel is most comfortable. All right, so pay attention when you're sitting at your at-home workstation. Pay attention to where in your body you're feeling strains and discomfort, and adjust as necessary. And that may be that you realize your feet are dangling and you need a footrest. Sometimes you have to get creative to position your monitor, your feet, and your keyboard to where they meet these guidelines for an ergonomic workstation. You could easily stack your monitor on some books to get it up higher. You could use a box or some pillows for your feet. Probably want something a little firmer than pillows, but sometimes that works for individuals. You could look online for inexpensive options like some sort of lumbar support or seat cushion or footrest. You can find very inexpensive options online and just kind of tailor it to what you need. And then you could also consider a workstation purchase. So if you're going to purchase a workstation, I'm just going to give you some inspiration. These are not specific suggestions. You would definitely need to pick what's best for you. But these are just examples of things that I have found that have worked for individuals or that work for particular situations. The one on the left is a VariDesk setup. This is an electric standing desk, so it adjusts in height, which is really nice because no matter what kind of chair you're using, you can adjust the desk height to what you need. You can customize this for the monitor arms, which is really nice. It gets your monitors up where they need to be. You can also add other accessories and storage options that help you with your organizing your workspace. And what I really like that is during this pandemic, where we have had to socially isolate and distance, this has been a very easy desk to set up. So it just requires snapping in a couple of pieces. It's easy. It doesn't require that I have to go out and set up the desk for the individual. So that has worked out really well, and that's why I like this system. The station on the right is a bit smaller. So if you have a limited space in your home and then you would also like something that you could roll away, put away on the weekends or in the evenings to get it out of the way, this is a really good option for that. It does house 2 monitors, so you can get them up in the area you need to be. It also has an adjustable drop-down keyboard tray, which helps you with your ergonomic positioning, and it does adjust from sitting to standing. So if you need to adjust throughout the day to stretch, then you can also stand with this as well. Some additional workstation inspiration is this Murphy style desk. So I know a lot of people have limited space in their homes and they weren't prepared to create a workstation at home, and something like this Murphy style desk that folds away gets everything out of your way and kind of forces you to organize all of your materials at the end of the day. That's actually quite useful. This one in particular, I found it actually doubles as a chalkboard, which is kind of nice because you could keep your to-do list on there. The one on the right is a clamp style workstation. It could clamp onto a kitchen table or TV stand, or if you did have a desk, it provides options to mount your monitors. It also has an adjustable keyboard tray, and the arm articulates so that you can adjust it to whatever height you needed for your chair. Or if you want to stand, it also gives you that option as well. Okay, to wrap up our workstation section, let's talk about some additional tips I'd love to suggest for you. The first one being to try to avoid working directly from a laptop. The proximity of the keyboard to the screen can really create an awkward posture for you. Either your keyboard's too high and your monitor's in the right place, or your monitor's too low and your keyboard's in the right place. So that can cause a lot of strain on your neck and your shoulders. And you know, if you can avoid that, that would be best. So for prolonged computer usage, I would suggest adding an external monitor or two, or an external keyboard and mouse. The keyboard and mouse are a really inexpensive option to add. Then you could raise your laptop up so that the monitor's in the right position, and then you can put the keyboard where it needs to go. And a really good suggestion is to ask your company if there are any spare devices, any monitors, mice, keyboards, in a storage closet. Sometimes that's actually a possibility. Another suggestion is to utilize a headset, not only for your comfort while you're teleconferencing or video conferencing, but it also helps reduce background disturbances. So if you're on a conference call with a class and you've got things going on in the background, your whole class is less likely to hear that if you're wearing a headset. But for long-term communication, it's much easier than having to hold your phone up to your ear, or either having it on speaker where they're going to hear a lot of background noise. Another suggestion is to consider storage bins or cabinets to organize and separate your documents from your personal items, because those items can get really mixed up if you're in a hurry to cook supper and you're shoving things around so the kids can sit at the table. You don't want to mix up your work things or your school documents with personal items. If you're using a personal computer, this suggestion was given to me by an IT manager. He suggested that anyone using a personal device for work, that they create a separate user profile to ensure that personal and work documents and applications aren't intermingling. Another suggestion is to check online for secondhand furniture that you could use to build your workstation. I know a lot of people use Facebook Marketplace or eBay or all these places where you can go online and find discounted options because it's secondhand. Also, there's lots of inexpensive places to find furniture, yard sales and thrift stores and things like that, so you don't have to spend a whole lot of money fixing up your workstation. Finally, find out if your company or school has a partnership with any vendors who could offer discounted pricing to the employees or students who are self-purchasing. And this is something that I discovered this summer. When speaking with some vendors, they are willing to pass along those discounts in certain situations if they already have a partnership with a business or entity. They're saying, hey, pass these discount codes along to your employees who are now forced to work from home because now they need to purchase equipment that the employer cannot afford to purchase. So there's some options there that you may be able to take advantage of. I mentioned before that your ideal work environment will have reduced distractions, and the easiest way to accomplish that is to utilize a room with a door. Duh, right? But that's not always possible for everyone. Some people don't have a designated room that they can use that's separate from everyone else, that has no distractions. So another option would be to use a sort of a partition, and that would at least reduce some of the visual distractions, and then hopefully also create sort of a barrier between you and any sound distractions. Another suggestion to reduce distractions is to limit your access to social media and personal calls and text. That's really important. Put your phone away. Put it on the other side of the room. Turn it on vibrate. Don't check it every 5 minutes. That way, you can actually focus on your task a little bit better if you're not getting these constant notifications. Also, don't turn on your television. You could get easily distracted by a show that comes on or the news, so just don't even turn it on. One of my colleagues suggested that she likes to play light jazz to drown out background noises, so you could play light jazz or other soothing music. And also you could utilize some technology that noise cancels, like earbuds or headphones, and we're about to talk about some of that technology. Well, you could just use some good old-fashioned earplugs. That's pretty low-tech. I've used them a good number of times to try to stay on task. You could also use a fan or some other device that makes a white noise. You could use a dedicated white noise machine. Those are fairly inexpensive, easy to purchase. You could use noise-canceling earbuds and headphones, as I mentioned before. You could use a smart home speaker. That would be like an Alexa or a Google that can play anything you request. So if you focus better when you're jamming out to Post Malone, then you go right ahead and do that. You could also look for some smartphone apps that play white noise or play a certain type of music that you enjoy. Any of those options would work great. Moving on to our second principle about working effectively, one of the suggestions that we're going to talk about is getting into a routine that mimics going to work or school, because that helps you to balance your work and life obligations. It gives you this sort of mental boundary between the two that helps you balance those. Why, yes, Cheryl, we can tell you're working from home. How did we know? Maybe it's the cereal bowl. I don't know. So this kind of leads us into how important it is to create a routine, something that's similar and mimics your regular work schedule. I do suggest trying to avoid sleeping in just because you don't have a commute. If your commute is an hour and you think, well, I'll just get an extra hour of sleep, well, actually, if you go ahead and you get up and you do something productive, you're sort of tricking yourself into motivating and starting your work day. You don't have to necessarily start before your regular work hours, but if you've done something productive, then now you feel motivated to move on and get started with work. Also, in many of the articles, you'll find that they recommend maintaining a schedule for work, including breaks and quitting time. If you're in school, then you should set a time to attend class daily, whether that's just watching lecture or attending to your class assignments. It's important to quit when it's time to quit to avoid burnout. She talked about that in the video earlier. And if you have to, get yourself on up and make yourself look pretty. If that's what you need to get in the mindset of work, then you do it, girlfriend. One big old tip that no one can stress enough is don't procrastinate. It doesn't matter if you're working remotely or not. Procrastination will ultimately only cause more stress later. I wanted to show you this really cute video of how to stop procrastinating. Let's see what they say.
Okay, are you ready? Step 1. Eat an elephant. Hey, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Look, what I'm saying is, you need time to digest, or you're going to make yourself sick. Reward yourself for getting through parts of the project, rather than waiting to reward yourself after the whole thing's over. Okay, procrastinator. Think about that one project that you really need to get done. But calm down. Instead of letting it overwhelm you, organize that project into small, bite-sized, manageable segments. Think about what needs to get done and write down what you're going to be doing to tackle this project hour by hour and make it specific. By breaking down this giant project into smaller tasks, this elephant will become a lot less daunting. Step 2. Pick out the itsy-bitsy goblins instead of going for the whole dragon. The hardest part about starting any project is always starting the project. A good way to get around this is to start a project off with the task you like the best. Listen, when you do something that you like, your brain releases dopamines, which makes you happy. Maybe it's decorating the cover of a report or writing a snappy intro into an otherwise incredibly boring paper. Step 3. Ignore the siren songs. Seriously. This step is straight out of Homer's epic poem, The Odyssey. In The Odyssey, our protagonist Ulysses is trying to get home. Unfortunately, this requires maneuvering through a strait of water where sailors are often lured onto the rocks by creatures called sirens. Instead of giving up, Ulysses instructs his crew to tie him to the mast of his ship and for all of them to plug their ears. No matter how much he yells and screams to head towards the beautiful sirens, the sailors must keep on track. We're not saying that you need to actually tie yourself up to anything, but you should plan to clear any distractions that will hamper your ability to procrastinate later. For example, if you're a sucker for Facebook or online video games, have your parents or your roommates change the internet password to keep you on track for studying. The less temptations you give into or have the ability to give into, the better you'll be at acing that exam. Okay, kiddos, let's recap. The best way to get around procrastination is to trick yourself into doing the work. It's true, though. We recommend that you do this in one of 3 ways. Number 1, breaking your tasks into segments. In other words, you go ahead and eat that elephant. Number 2, start with the most enjoyable part of the project. Go for those itsy-bitsy goblins. And number 3, avoid that siren song. Clear out those distractions so you can get the job done. Have these tips helped? Leave us a message below or email us at watchwellcast.com.
Okay, some final tips on working effectively. Number 1 is to create a to-do list. To-do lists are very satisfying. They're motivating. It's nice to be able to check stuff off, to visually see that you're accomplishing your tasks. There is a resource listed at the bottom of this presentation that tells you, it's a video that explains how to focus the best when you're working from home. And he has a rule of 3 that he mentions where he says, create a to-do list and only write down the 3 most important things that you want to accomplish that day. Don't write down anything else because it can get a bit overwhelming. And he suggested that you use sort of like a whiteboard like in the picture, and if you had to write down anything else that's not related to work, you could put that at the bottom, but when you're working on work stuff, just focus on 3 main items. I really like the idea of the whiteboard. I like to recommend the Outlook task list. I tell my coworkers all the time they should be using their task list. It's right there. You're checking your emails. You might as well use it. And also you could look at some reminder apps where you can create lists that sync with your computer and vice versa. I really like to suggest that you avoid sticky notes. In reality, when you're using a bunch of sticky notes, it's creating a sense of chaos. You have these notes scattered everywhere. They fall on the floor. They're really not organized well. The majority of the time when I see people who use sticky notes, they use a lot of them. And so they're kind of losing their effect. And if you can just avoid using something like that, use one of the methods like the Outlook list or the whiteboard that's kind of like a running list where you erase it when you're done and you're not having to keep up with the stack of paper. That, to me, in my opinion, is much better. Also, I suggest that you utilize the technology that's available to you. And you could find out from your company or your school IT what's available, especially as far as software. For example, at the University of Alabama, you can log on and look at what kind of software is available for free for students. Sometimes companies have software that's available that could help you. For instance, our agency has short keys, and that's where you could type out a long string of text and then save it and easily insert that into an email or a document just by using a shortcut key. And you can use other computer shortcuts as well. You just maybe need to practice with that. I also suggest taking time for your professional development. Grow your skills during this time. Find out how to be better at your job so that you can be more valuable and you can feel proud of yourself for accomplishing something. And prepare for your meetings. Don't waste your time or your colleagues' time by not being prepared for the meeting. No one wants to wait around for you, so just do your best to be prepared, be on time, and know what you're doing when you step up for a meeting. I wanted to quickly share this resource with you for working effectively. On our ADRS Lakeshore page, they share work tips that very closely follow what we're talking about today, and that's called Work Tips Wednesdays. If you follow their Facebook page, you'll get that information. Okay, number 3. And this one, I cannot stress enough to maintain your mental health. And when we surveyed individuals who have been working remotely, especially who have been forced to work remotely during this pandemic, mental health concerns surpassed physical health concerns, which I did not expect. I understand it. It's a very stressful time. You feel like you have a lot of demands on you. Things changed very quickly. There's a lot of things going on right now that's very stressful. You need to make sure you maintain your mental health. I had a nice discussion with Vivian Smith of Behavioral Health Systems, and she gave me a good bit of advice to pass on. And one of the quotes that I loved that she said is, "It's like on an airplane where they instruct you to put on your oxygen mask first. You're no good to anyone if you don't take care of yourself." She went on to suggest that to maintain your mental health, it's good to create a routine. It's good to go for a walk outside and just enjoy some fresh air and some sunlight. Sunlight is so good for you. She recommends that you eat healthy, take care of your body, and to be sure to reach out to any local mental health resources that are available to you. And I've listed some of those at the end of the presentation so that you can share those with anyone that you feel would benefit from them. One of the common suggestions when you start looking into articles that tell you how to do the best of working remotely that you can do is to get up and move. Take breaks. Go for a walk outside. Just like Vivian said, enjoy the sunlight. It's beautiful. It's refreshing. Stretch during your work breaks. That's good for your physical health. It's good for your mental health. It just feels good. And exercise. I personally love to box, so I'll go beat up a punching bag if I need to, and that's pretty good source of exercise there, and makes me feel good. I want to make sure that you know it's okay to ask for help. Everyone is struggling in some form or fashion. They may just not disclose that to you, but if you ask for help, then you're helping yourself, and that's where you need to be to maintain your mental health. So, one of the articles that I posted in the resources mentions that you should just get over yourself and quit assuming that you're the only person who can do that task, you're the only one who's qualified, because it's better for your own mental health and for your effective work strategies to delegate or share tasks where necessary. Don't give people work that belongs to you, but if it's something that can be delegated to others, take advantage of that. Quit assuming that you're the only one who's got to do it. Also, speak with your supervisor about any issues you're having. And Ms. Vivian from BHS suggested that if you're a supervisor and an employee comes to you expressing concerns, just take a moment to acknowledge their concerns and look up the resources with them, because that makes them feel like their feelings are validated and that you value them as an employee, and that really helps with their motivation to work. And so you've looked up those resources with them, you've passed them along to them, now it's up to them. They can take the reins and follow through and utilize those resources if they want to. Also, I suggest that you take time to speak with your family about sharing obligations. If you've got a lot on your plate, especially since working remotely or learning remotely can cause tasks to take a little bit longer sometimes to accomplish, then maybe there are some chores around the house that your family could help you with. If you're a student, I highly suggest you communicate with your professor if there's any issues that you are having with the class or a team project. Sometimes your teammates aren't really pulling their weight, or maybe sometimes there's things that you haven't had the chance to understand yet, and maybe they could clarify it for you. I guarantee a professor is going to be much happier with a student who communicated with them throughout the semester about any issues rather than panicking at the end of the semester and waiting till the last minute. Another suggestion from Ms. Vivian was that individuals contact United Way 211. She said they're a great resource. They can connect you with local resources that can help you out. You can also go and look into your employee assistance program or your mental health counselor to get connected resources in your area. Another important way to protect your mental health is to set boundaries. And this is another suggestion that carries on in many of the articles that you'll find. So one of the things I thought of was that if you wouldn't normally schedule 8 meetings in a day, don't agree to do that many video calls just because everyone assumes that you're more available since you're not having to meet in person. It makes it really difficult to maintain your daily work tasks if you're obligated to that many meetings during the day. It's also hard to be on for that long, so you need to take breaks for yourself. Also, don't let your work day spill over into your home and family time. That's very important. Avoid leeches or those colleagues who like to ask you to help with one more thing. They're not doing their job and they want your help. Can you just help me with one more thing, please? Just, guide them on how to do it themselves. If you're a student, realize that you can't always take up the slack of your classmates in the group projects. You're going to have slackers. There are people who don't care as much as you. You can't always take up the slack. Just communicate with your professor if something like that's going on. And don't burden yourself with proving your worth by working excessive hours, because ultimately you're going to burn yourself out and then you're not useful to anyone. So, if you're doing your due diligence to do your job and do your classwork and you're doing the best you can and you're getting as much done as you can within your normal work or hours for school, then be satisfied with that. If you have to prove your worth beyond that, then maybe that's a conversation to have with a supervisor possibly. All right, and as she said in the video, celebrate your wins. Don't let that unfinished task consume your thoughts. Be proud of what you accomplished during the day and pat yourself on the back for staying motivated, because a lot of people don't. So, the fact that you care enough is great. Don't get down about what you didn't finish. Just move on. Be prepared for the next day. Finally, to wrap up the mental health section, let's look at some tips to help you maintain your mental health. First of all, look for an app that can guide you through meditation, anxiety-reducing techniques, yoga, or exercise. There's tons of apps out there. There's lots of free apps. There's even free YouTube videos, things online, Facebook groups that you can add yourself to. Just look out there for some resources that can help you with those techniques. Also, remember, you can't control someone else's work behaviors. If you care more than anyone else, don't let yourself resent the fact that someone's getting away with doing less or that they're just not pulling their weight. You really cannot control that. It's going to be up to their supervisor to take care of that. Unplug from work. Make sure you shut your computer off to signal the end of the day. That gives your brain a signal that says, hey, you know what? I'm done. I'm not going to think about work anymore. We'll think about it again in the morning. Also, set yourself up for success tomorrow. Create a to-do list for the next day. That means that you've already thought about what you need to do tomorrow. It's prioritized. When you get up in the morning and you start work, you don't have to think about that. You can just get started with what's most important. Also, it's important to declutter your workspace. You want a fresh start in the morning. You don't want to have to deal with a mess that you left from the day before. So definitely declutter your workspace, get it cleared, and that way it's also not in your way for you to deal with home life. Finally, get plenty of sleep. This is very important. Don't think that just because you will have a restful day at home versus being in the office, you're not commuting and such, that you don't need as much sleep. You really do. You have some additional stresses that your brain's dealing with, and your brain needs the rest, your body needs the rest. Sleep is good for you, so make sure you get rest. Hopefully now you feel like you've got the tools to successfully work from home or learn from home, so go out and you rock it now. I wanted to show you real quick the next 3 slides or resources that I have laid out for you regarding the workstations, working effectively, and mental health. We can definitely send these to you if you're interested. And now I will open it up for questions.